Everybody ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Good afternoon. I would like to call to order the meeting of the Oklahoma Space Industry Development Authority.
Scurry,
Here.
General Lyman,
Here.
Mr. Schultz,
Here.
Chairman Rolls,
Here.
Mr. Siegfried,
Here.
Mr. Henry.
Present.
Thank you very much. So we have established that we have a quorum present, and we are conducting this meeting in accordance with the Open Meeting Act, which means our records are available. We are broadcasting this meeting for the public information. Before we start today, this is not on the agenda, but today is a somber day in our country's history, September 11th, where we had a really tragic event occur, being attacked on our own soil. So we'd like to just take a moment and have a moment of silence to remember the people that lost their lives, the people who defend our country, and the people who continue to fight for freedom on our behalf. Thank you very much. So moving on to our next agenda, do we have any guests who would like to introduce themselves today? Thank you very much. And who are you with? Okay. Okay, welcome. Glad to have you here today. Yes. Yes.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Yes, thank you for being here. We appreciate you. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 4, approval of the minutes of the July 10th board meeting. Deidre, I'll turn that over to you.
Okay, the minutes are posted here in the book. They have been sent to everybody. Does anybody have any additions or changes that they would like to add?
I did not.
All right. No
Make this
changes.
motion. I'll make the motion to accept and approve the minutes. Second.
Okay.
Ms. Scurry,
Aye.
General Lyman,
Aye.
Mr. Schultz,
Aye.
Chairman Rolls,
Aye.
Mr. Siegfried,
Aye.
Mr. Henry.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And then Deidre, you also have the treasurer's report.
Okay. Yeah, we have 2 months to approve today, both July and August. They are also in your binder. For the month of July, the expenditures were $701,000, and for the month of August, it was $506,000 with the breakdowns in the binder. Does anybody have any questions or edits, changes that they would like to talk about?
Okay, hearing no questions or points of discussion, do we have a motion? Or we can take a couple more minutes.
We got a motion.
Waiting for a motion.
I move for approval.
Second.
All right, very good.
Ms. Scurry,
Aye.
General Lyman,
Aye.
Mr. Schultz,
Aye.
Chairman Rolls,
Aye.
Mr. Siegfried,
Aye.
Mr. Henry.
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. Moving on now to agenda item number 6. This would be the executive director's report. So Craig Smith, we would love to hear from you.
All right, well, catching us up on the ARPA projects, we met with our Synergy team right after the last board meeting in July. Got about the 95%, what do you call it, the 95% stage of planning and design. And regrettably, not long after that, they lost one of their members, and so that kind of set things back a little bit. But so we reviewed that in July. They needed some additional information for the electronic portion, which we provided to them about 2 weeks ago. And so at this point, we expect the issue for construction, the bid, probably in October. And the bid completion and opening will probably be in October, November, depending on how long that they put the bid out for. I think OMES will control that. Then the issue of construction, the notice to proceed will occur probably in the November, December timeframe. And then we're told that the construction project will be 12 to 15 months. So I've bumped this back to easily, we should be able to meet this by summer of 2025 on the ARPA. And that's the water and the wastewater portion. And then on the high-speed internet, that is the portion that we're going to, we've put a high-speed fiber to the headquarters, and then we'll do bridges to the tower and to other locations, and we're also going to supplement that with some fiber to other locations as well. Joe, if you want to touch on that anymore, but what we seek to do is put high-speed fiber capability throughout the airport and industrial park. Through this process, we learned that there is a division at OMES called Cyber Command. That is the cybersecurity division for the state of Oklahoma. They've offered to come out and inspect what we're looking to do and make sure that it certainly falls into compliance, and then certainly checks all the boxes and measures that we would need to have a secure, in general, I mean, I'm sure you appreciate this, make it it's a secure asset and capability for not only for OSIDA, but for our tenants as well. Anything you want to add to that, Joe?
No, they're coming tomorrow.
Yeah, actually coming out tomorrow. So with all that, we expect that we'll be able to utilize every bit of the $250,000 in ARPA funding for that, and we would probably end up using some of our prep funds to provide the necessary hardware, which is the infrastructure, the gate machinery, the cameras, some of the access control data that we'll need, the ID readers that we'll need to do. So we're going to use up all the ARPA money and probably dip into the prep money a little bit to complete that project.
This is going to help Premium Aerospace with their Part 145 security requirements. You know, access throughout the airport and cameras throughout the airport with signage. So security is really going to increase over the next year.
I have a quick question, and I know you don't have the answer, but I'd like to get it down, because it's going to be an astronomical number, but could you get a quote, I think, or at least a general idea of what it would cost to fence in the entire airfield? To like, no kidding, secure standards.
So the airport has about 11 to 12 miles of complete fencing around the airfield, 7 foot high with 3-strand barbed wire. When DHS, FBI, all the 3-letter agencies visited a couple of years ago, that was one thing they commented on, that we have better fencing than any other spaceport they've seen.
Yeah, like I said, it's just a question for maybe for the next meeting, or just maybe just an email. I'm just curious what it would take for us to finish, like put in gates where gates need to be put in. You know what I mean? Like, what would be the ideal? If we could make it ideal, what would be that cost? I just want a general ballpark number, and I don't necessarily, like I said, I don't need today or anything like that.
Absolutely. My goal is, I do think we need some more vehicle gates, just to limit where people go. I'd like to see people just go to where they need to and not drive around the airfield to get someplace. So, absolutely.
Thank you.
This is kind of a layout of where the prep money will likely be spent. We're going to spend about $19.5 million with prep and JUA funding on the runway. That's in joint seals. That's spall repair. Unfortunately, there's going to be some panel replacement requirements. Taxiways, sections of the apron, certainly all the way down to apron road 2 or 3. I can't remember the name of that one. And then certainly LED lights on the runway, and switches, ILS equipment. New signage and new markings, painting. After they beat up all the pavement and put new pavement in, they're going to have to clean it all off and restripe it and repaint it to FAA standards. So About 19.5 million is what we've calculated for that. 5 million has been identified as set aside for, up to 5 million for airport detection and avoidance technology. So it's a radar type capability without having an ASR on site. We worked with Department of Aerospace and Aeronautics. We had we put out a bid. We had 5 companies respond. We did interviews with 4 of them. OMES has the results of those tallies right now, and so they're making the determination on who is going to have that contract going forward. So that technology will enable companies, unmanned aerospace companies, similar to that of Kratos and others, to be able to come to and utilize our airport for testing and development. Right now, radar coverage comes out of Fort Worth Center. So by the time it gets to Burns Flat, there's a gap. Companies like the unmanned companies want to have a local awareness of what's in the sky. This is money that we've set aside and has been set aside for this purpose, and so that's where about 5 million of that 27.5 will go. The other 4.5 we've identified for property improvements, hangar developments, things of that nature. We want to be able to build some GA hangars such that we can get some. We've got some businesses out there that are looking for space to do some small engine repair on aircraft and just plane storage, and small businesses of that variety, so we can keep our numbers, our tail number inventory up. Tail number of inventory helps us continue to get FAA funding. So if that number goes down below a threshold, then we're not available. We don't have access to that money anymore. And then, of course, as I touched on a moment ago, some of the security enhancements, the gate controls and cameras. Some of those numbers will slide as we start to do our pavement project, and we start to see this first pavement project, which you're going to see on the agenda here in just a little bit, came about 23–24% higher than engineers' estimates. So if that trend continues, that $17 to $19 million figure will probably be adjusted on how much pavement we can actually address with that. So we keep a little bit of money just on the side, just so we can move it from one project to another, so that we can continue to get the pavement project completed, and then whatever we have left, then we can do hangars and some of the other development that we've identified.
So Craig, do you have any kind of a master schedule in terms of timeline of these projects? How they kind of waterfall one after the other, or how they stack up on top of one another?
We've got, on the pavement portion, and you'll see it in a little bit, we've got about 5 phases that will come one right after the other. And so the engineering on that has taken a lot longer than we anticipated to get to this point. But what will happen is you'll see a cascading effect. When one project starts to wrap up, then the next one will start. So it kind of depends on where the prior project ends, and when we can do the bid for the next one. And it may be bid, Joe, you want to touch on this? There are some opportunities maybe that if we can get one contractor on site, is there any chance that we can continue with that contractor, or is it each one of these phases need to be bid out specifically?
Each phase will be bid out separately. So right now, phase 1 is going to be starting October. I think Craig will get into this, but phase 1 starting October 1st. They're designing phase 2 right now. Phase 2 is going to run in, that's going to be the closure of the runway. And that's going to run in conjunction, the paving of the repair of the runway, in conjunction with the electrical project. So there's actually going to be 2 projects there. That's going to take about, and that should start in the spring. That's going to take about 3 to 4 months to complete both of those. And then the third pavement project should start right after that. They're just going to go one after another. So as they're starting one, they're designing the next one, and that's.
So the timelines are pretty general at this point.
I was told initially that if they just bid it out as instead of 5 phases, like one huge project, it would be 2 years. So this will be going on for a while.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Just kind of helps to have that understanding of, because you will have multiple projects of different types going on, and so for us to really have the scope of what the undertakings are and how long, what the anticipated completion dates are.
We're calculating about 2 years at least on all the pavement projects altogether. Now, the one that's really going to be affecting is the one where we shut down the main runway.
Yeah.
And that's why we wanted to coordinate it such that we can do the electrical at the same time, so we don't have the pavement come through and then the electrical guys come through and think, oh, well, we need to get back out there. So we're trying to conduct it so that both of them can occur at the same time. And that's the engineering right now, and that's where the general engineer was kind of helping to schedule everybody together and oversee the entire projects and understand what everybody's doing and coordinate all the timing of each phase of this project.
Excellent.
I'm sure I've asked this before, but is the small runway still gonna be open when the long one's closed? Just, I'm sure I asked it before.
No, and it's a good question to ask. It's a daylight-only runway. There's no lights on it, but it does give us that option to be able to still land aircraft at the airport. So the different projects, this building in the top left has been removed, and when it was removed, it left holes in the sides of the hangar. Our crew took the steel from the PAC project, from hangar 234, and was able to use that to be able to patch the holes in the hangar. And then that's what it looks like. And like I said, most recently, that's probably taken about 2 weeks ago. So they've cleared it all out, repaired the walls, and then repainted it to at least kind of match the rest of the hangar. So the holes have been patched mostly for the point right now. So kudos to the crew. They utilized what they had. This would have cost us several $100,000 to have a crew come in, put new steel up, and do this. Our crew did it for $10,000, probably in that ballpark. So, and the satisfaction of Kratos, who's in one of the hangars on the right, they were pleased with the work, and we're still working on the one on the left. And that's the one that, when I have a large aerospace manufacturer come back and do testing on their large aircraft here in a few months, hopefully, that's the hangar that they'll be utilizing. It's another demo project. This is the last ones you see of this, Dr. Henry, but I wanted you to see the inside of this building. I don't know if I had it in the last one, but this is one of the first buildings you see when you come in on one of the roads coming into the park. The previous tenant made ethanol in this building, and then unfortunately passed away. So this building was filled with tanks like this on the right, and out in the back and inside. The building was just filled with. It's a great building, but we couldn't use it for anything else. And one of the demolition contractors came through, and as you see, they've pulled some of the tanks out. They've cut them all up. These tanks are sitting on concrete foundations. They were able to clear the land underneath it. So that building is about a 3-story building that it's fenced in. It's now a utilizable asset. So we can put that back on the inventory to be leased, and hopefully we'll be able to, if anybody listening needs a building. The top are the blast shields. There are 4 remaining now. 4. We took them all out except for the 4. And then the light standards, they showed up yesterday morning at 8:30. By 11:30, all those standards were removed and down. It was remarkable. It was like, I don't think I could have I told Joe, I said, I couldn't have taken an edger and walked down that concrete edge and done it as fast as those guys took those poles down. And then that's the old pool building.
Is there an after picture here, or am I not seeing that?
You'll get to come see it at the next board meeting, perhaps.
Okay.
Just imagine, if you will,
It looks like the bottom
nothing.
picture there has just the 4 left, but the light poles are up. You see that?
Oh, yes, yeah.
But-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brought down yesterday, so.
Yeah, those are just brought down yesterday. So when you come out if we do a board meeting out there, you'll see nothing, including the pool building, which is on the other road that enters the park. That building was removed, and you can't even tell it was there.
So did you say the lights are down now?
They're done. Yeah, in 3 hours they had them knocked down. And that was those lights are what, about 800 feet away, 1,000 feet away from the small runway.
Yeah.
So not only did they not work, they were a height hazard, and so they served no purpose, and it was nice just to get those down. And that kind of helps clear room for continued development down the apron as well. This is the trade show at Farnborough. We had a delegation of about 90, and clearly couldn't get them all in, but we had the governor, lieutenant governor, state representative, secretary of state, and several businesses represented at our booth. That's our booth. This is taken from the South Carolina booth. There were 34 states represented. We had to scoot back into the South Carolina booth to be able to take our picture of our booth, but it was a great show. There's actually a space zone at Farnborough, an entire tent dedicated to space. You'll see some space players there. The lady in the tan jacket is with Dawn Aerospace. And that's Dr. George Neild at the podium, leading a discussion on point-to-point transfer in space. And so that's kind of the future of spaceports like ours, is to be able to go point-to-point, not entirely into space, but suborbitally. Like I tell folks, spaceports are where airports were probably in the 1910s. So at some point, it's likely that spaceports will be modes of transportation for general public. And this is a discussion opportunity at Farnborough, where many of the players in that field gathered together. This guy on the right looks a whole lot like him, but that is not Sir Richard Branson. But I thought it was fun. He was having a good time at the show and getting lots of pictures of the folks. And that concludes.
He is not. Okay.
And that concludes the report.
Okay, great, thank you. Does anyone have any questions or comments on Craig's report? No? Okay, thank you very much, Craig. Appreciate all that information. All right, next on our agenda would be the update from the Artemis Group, and we have Gabe Sherman here to make that presentation.
All right. Thank you guys for the opportunity to just kind of bring you up to speed with everything we've been working on. So I like to kind of go in the buckets of the Oklahoma Space Renaissance vision that we put together. So I'll just kind of walk through a number of those. But as we started this effort, remember, we all kind of talked about the idea of being more focused on industry development statewide. And if we did a good job there, then what we would get to is spaceport utilization, right? So rather than just focus on spaceport utilization, open the aperture, take the strengths of our state, the leadership in our state, and say, okay, how do we bring all of that to bear to develop the industry statewide? And so whenever you think about the different parts and pieces of the Oklahoma Space Renaissance vision, the first one was inland launch. We started to talk about inland launch as a key component to spaceport utilization. We did a great dinner down in Florida and have since moved forward on this idea of commissioning a study in partnership with the Aerospace Corporation to determine and to actually move towards this, one of the Space Force's strategic goals of increasing launch capacity for our nation. They see that as kind of one of our Achilles heels, not only from a national security perspective, but just from an industry perspective. And so we need to be able to launch other places than just from our coasts. So what OSIDA has done is they said we'd be interested in meeting that need of the nation. And so we're moving towards this idea of engaging in a study to evaluate what types of rockets, what technologies could potentially give us the opportunity to launch inland vertically to orbit. And then if we identify some key technologies, everything that this study will look to measure is not only the trajectories that we have, right, for our launch corridors, but also the expected probability of casualty should something catastrophic happen. And so understanding the right technologies that minimize or mitigate that expected probability of casualty is the goal of this study, to kind of look at, okay, if we use these technologies, man, that brings it down. If we use this technology, that brings it up. And so we can start looking at key components, key technologies, key companies in the launch industry and determine whether we want to lean in, have further discussions about where they are in their projects today, and eventually look at potential partnerships down the road. Now, inland launch is not something that happens in the near term. This is a longer term play. But the question is the spaceport ever going to be, based on what we know today, capable of inland launch to orbit? And if we're being held to account to send stuff to space, well, we should probably understand what the restrictions are, what the limitations are. Are they technical in that the development of technology isn't there yet? Or is it our launch trajectories, the things that have been approved here, or the potential launch trajectories from Burns Flat that are the limiting factors? So those are good questions that we could answer. They would also help inform us, not only as the Artemis Group, but as OSIDA at large, as to what should our strategy for spaceport utilization be. And so this is just one component. The second part of spaceport utilization is horizontal launch, right? You think about our launch window right now, our launch license right now is for vehicles in the horizontal. Dawn Aerospace is a company that is very interested in working with the state of Oklahoma. They have a vehicle. They are a New Zealand company. They have a vehicle right now that is in testing, right? I mean, like it's testing frequently. And it's doing flights up to 50,000, 80,000 feet, soon to over 100,000 feet, 100,000 kilometers. And they are actually moving towards a day where they are going to be launching in the horizontal to low Earth orbit and suborbital space. and doing activities up there, microgravity research specifically. So their vehicle would be capable of 3 to 4 minutes. Yes, sir, General.
Where are they doing their testing?
New Zealand. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. They are a New Zealand company. So as you can imagine, General, they really want to do business with the United States, specifically the United States government. And so they are looking for what is their strategy for entrance to the U.S.? We're at the central, we are the central node right now of that strategy. Now, there are costs associated with it. There's technology development that is still to come. But this is a company, if we think about smoke and fire from Burns Flat to space, this is the company that gives us the greatest probability of doing that in the next 1 to 2 years. I think we could be seeing flights out there as early as the end of next year, if this is something that we pursue. So we have proposals that have been turned in. They're being reviewed, not only within the Department of Commerce, but inside of Lieutenant Governor's office, and we're working actively to see if the funds requested meet what we can obligate and get to, see if we can find a win for spaceport utilization. So moving from spaceport utilization to, I look at high volume manufacturing. The state of Oklahoma, as you guys know, we are very good in the state of Oklahoma at putting things together, specifically in aerospace. When you start thinking about our MRO history and all of just the heritage that we have here in the state, it is a strength of ours. And companies in the space industry are starting to understand that is a strength for the state of Oklahoma. Just this last week, Chairwoman Rolls and Craig and myself and others, we had a company in town that's looking at not only testing here, hypergolic testing specifically, but also manufacturing of rocket engines here in the state. And so these are the types of opportunities. That's I think probably the third company that we've had in the state looking at our manufacturing capabilities. Everybody loves engineering talent. We're doing a good job in the state producing engineering talent, but a lot of these companies are looking for who are the experts at manufacturing, CNC machining, those types of skills that are needed to actually produce engines and components in volume like is required from a lot of the kind of shifts in our national space policy. So we're well positioned to meet that need on the high volume manufacturing side, and we continue to bring companies to town to look at Oklahoma City, Tulsa, and others. On that as well, on the space engine side of things, we are exploring multiple partnerships with the University of Oklahoma, specific to developing next generation thrusters for kind of reducing our dependency on China and Russia for fuel whenever it comes to a lot of our in-space propulsion systems. Oklahoma, again, is uniquely qualified to meet that need. We are the third leading producer of iodine in the world, and we have space engine manufacturers that are looking at iodine as fuel. We have great expertise at the University of Oklahoma. We have the right company that's interested in manufacturing those. And so we're pulling those partnerships together right now. So that's another really exciting development, not only from the high volume manufacturing side, but just research, development, and inspiration here inside of the state. And then you move to microgravity. We've talked a lot about microgravity. We have a company called Redwire. We have the University of Oklahoma. We even have the Choctaw Nation engaged in discussing what our microgravity strategy could be here in the state of Oklahoma whenever you start pulling on the needs of a tribal nation to identify better treatments, better pharmaceuticals for cancer and diabetes. You have a worldwide leader in research and development on the pharmaceutical side in the University of Oklahoma. And then you have a company that has the capability to put stuff in space, formulate the right crystallization for specific drugs, and then bring them back. We feel like there's a partnership here that's just waiting to happen, and we're actively working with OU, Redwire, and the Choctaw Nation on that partnership. So could be one of the first steps that the state of Oklahoma takes on the microgravity front. Secondly, in the microgravity world, we've got a company called Space Forge, and they're focused on semiconductors and on-orbit manufacturing. We have a tech hub running out of North Texas up into southeastern Oklahoma right now that's focused on semiconductor development and manufacturing and solving our chip crisis, right? And so this particular company is very interested in Oklahoma, not only because we have that tech hub here, but we have key players and leadership on that tech hub that are here in the state of Oklahoma. And then we also have entry, descent, and landing capabilities here in the state of Oklahoma. So if the research and the work is being done in microgravity, we have the opportunities to bring that home here to the state and then continue the research and development and eventual manufacturing of those components here in the state. So that, again, this is a years-long process, but we are very well positioned to meet some of those specific needs as well. So there are just a number of things that are happening on a statewide basis here to help position Oklahoma as a space state. I believe that we should be a space state. I believe we have the capabilities, the expertise, the heritage to be a space state. We just have to open the aperture and continue to think about industry development as we're charged to at OSIDA, and then wait for opportunities for spaceport utilization to present themselves, and they will. Fortunately, you saw Craig's slide, which I thought was really good over there at Farnborough. Dr. George Neild, who was leading that panel, and Khaki, she is the lady in the brown jacket, and her name is Khaki. I thought that was pretty nice, right? But they are very engaged. They understand the spaceport. George was involved in the original licensing of the spaceport. Like, they know what can work here, and Dawn is a very good solution. It can be transformational, honestly, for the spaceport when you start thinking about the impact it could have of us sending things to space out there, research, development, and inspiration. So a lot of really good things happening. I don't ever want to just come up here and spout off, these are just activities that aren't tied to a strategy. These are activities that are definitely tied to the strategy of the Oklahoma Space Renaissance Vision, and we just continue to move out on them day over day. Okay, I'll stop there. Any questions?
Would you say that there's any specific infrastructure changes we need to do to the spaceport right now to attract Dawn?
Yeah, good question. So there are a couple things that they have requested, right, in their proposal. One is kind of updated hangar facilities, and we aren't talking about, this isn't a large vehicle, right? So we don't need massive redos of hangars out there. We don't need to knock stuff down and build stuff, probably just bringing things up to what they need for that specific vehicle. They need basically, we have the room, we have a telemetry room already built out there at Burns Flat. We just need to put the components in it at this point. So imagine walking in out there and actually seeing space stuff on screens in that room. That's what we need to do. That's kind of what we need to bring up to speed for them, because they will operate those flights from that telemetry room. So it's going to be small infrastructure investments. Craig, I'm trying to remember, I think from the overall infrastructure components and training, we're talking about a couple millions of dollars. We aren't talking about tens of millions of dollars. And we're talking about an entire proposal that includes the vehicle, all of the support, everything that we need, and Dawn coming alongside to lead business development for us of about $11 million. So.
Can you talk a little more about the telemetry room? So we would be supplying, they want us to purchase the equipment that they would need to use for, can you explain that a little bit more?
Sure. So what Dawn is looking at is a strategy where the state of Oklahoma, we invest in the vehicle, we invest in support infrastructure here on the ground in the state. They bring their team and their expertise to then operate the flights, work with the state to fulfill the flight manifests, and to train Oklahomans to fly this vehicle. Again, this is not, we are not sitting in this vehicle, right? This is all flown by folks here on the ground. But it's that level of smaller infrastructure investments that gets them here as opposed to anywhere else in the U.S. And so, and then they come alongside and ensure that everything is successful out at Burns Flat. We aren't just left to then figure it out. But yes, those are the types of investments, and that would be their expectation based on the proposal.
So Dawn wouldn't be using Dawn, the company wouldn't necessarily be using Burns Flats to operate. Dawn, the state is operating out of Burns Flats with their assistance?
So the way that the partnership is kind of, from the initial proposal to today is very different. The initial proposal was exactly as you described. We buy it, we own it, we operate it, right? And it's on us. Hope you guys are successful. We're here, and we're going to be here to support you. Now what that proposal looks like is state of Oklahoma steps up and invests in the vehicle and the infrastructure. And Dawn now comes in and leads all of the business development, all of the operations. They actually put their people here, and then they train Oklahomans to actually backfill their people so that their people can get back to New Zealand. So it's a full-on support system that's engaged now from beginning to end, as opposed to here's your vehicle, hope everything works out, right?
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, no, it's a great question.
And Gabe, can you describe what the business development, what all that would ensue?
Yeah, it's great. So whenever you think about demand for microgravity experiments and microgravity time, there is a tremendous amount of demand and there is not a lot of supply, right? Most of that is happening on the International Space Station, or it's happening in some of your suborbital flights with Blue Origin and Virgin Galactic. And when those suborbital flights, which that's a lot more like what Don will provide than work on the ISS, those suborbital flights are supplying folks with about 3 to 4 minutes of microgravity, and people are paying $250,000 for those 3 to 4 minutes. What this vehicle does is it takes the crewed portion out of that, so it brings the complexity way down. The payload space is a little bit smaller, but it's still plenty to do some kind of key experiments up there. And so the idea would be this would be the most affordable opportunity to get to microgravity to do research in the United States. And so you'd look at all of your academic institutions, a lot of your private companies looking for access to microgravity, being drawn to that solution. On top of that, and so you kind of have a built-in customer base of everybody that's using microgravity right now who needs more frequent flights and more data, right? And everybody needs more data whenever it comes to microgravity research. Vehicle will be capable of flying 100+ times a year, right? So at about a $100,000 price tag for customers in the marketplace. So whenever you think about the access, the demand is there basically from a lot of the academic institutions, a lot of the government entities, and then also commercial companies that are trying to further some of their early stage products. So there's great demand signals there, but they have not come to the U.S. and they haven't started marketing that service commercially just yet to everybody because they're still in testing. So.
And one last question for me, sorry.
No, you're great.
So if they said, yes, we can come to Oklahoma, how long would it take for us to set up that telemetry room and stuff? What kind of timeline would that be?
Yeah, it's a great question. I need to go back and look at the proposal. The answer would be quickly. I mean, quickly. They're going through kind of their last few rounds here of qualifications for the vehicle. George, I call him George, Dr. Neild, he's intimately involved with it, and he understands exactly, because he used to run FAA AST here in the U.S., so the Office of Commercial Space Transportation. So he knows exactly what boxes need to be checked to get this vehicle here. He also understands our licensing and how the vehicle would work with what we're qualified to do. So the answer is quickly, just because we have some of those pieces already in place, but I'll get you the exact proposed specifics.
So we're looking at a few $1 million quickly.
A few $1 million quickly.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, if we could just do that, it'd be great. Yeah.
Is part of the funding, I know there's investment in the vehicle, is part of the funding that's being reviewed now through the process at the governor's office and elsewhere, does that include the infrastructure funding
It does.
needed that we talked about
Yes, sir.
for the telemetry room, et cetera? It does, okay.
Yes, sir.
So
Yep.
we're talking about the full package?
Yeah, full
and not
package.
piecemealed?
100% correct,
Okay,
sir.
got
Yep,
it.
we're looking at roughly $11 million for that entire package: vehicle, operational infrastructure, people, training, support, all of
Got it.
those things.
Thank you.
Yep.
Excellent.
All right.
Okay.
Anything else?
Other questions? Thoughts? Okay.
All right.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, and
Appreciate it.
I apologize for not asking you to introduce yourself at the beginning
No,
of the
it's good.
meeting.
It's good.
I just got used to seeing you there,
Yeah.
so.
No, it's great. That's great. Thank you.
Glad you're
And
here.
thank you for having me.
Thank you, Gabe. All right. Thank you very much. Craig, you look like you have something you wanted to say.
I don't, I had that look.
Okay.
There's all kinds of stuff going on up here all the time.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, moving on to agenda item number 8. Consideration of renewing the Artemis contract for fiscal year 25.
If you'll recall, this is on our July docket, and
Yes.
as you can see, this is some of the stuff that we're getting with the Artemis Group. I wanted Gabe to be able to present, so you'd have a fresh view in your mind of what the Artemis Group is here to do, what we've brought them on board to help us do, and what they've been able to accomplish in the last year, putting the Space Renaissance vision together, and then bringing companies that otherwise may not have looked at Oklahoma. And it certainly helps to have the former NASA administrator living in your state, and having those connections and being able to make phone calls and have those and recognize people at trade shows and say, we need to talk, and this is why. So that's one of the bonuses of having the Artemis with us. This was a contract that we had last year. This is basically a re-upping of that contract. The circumstances are just the same as they were. We've just changed the dates in it, and so wanted to bring this before the board, requesting that we go into another contract renewal with Artemis for the next year to May of 2025, at least.
All right.
Any
And-
questions?
Yes, question, and I just want to make the statement that my business has a relationship with the Artemis Group, so in this topic, I won't be participating in the discussion or the voting.
And I'll add the same with my business as well, so I'll abstain as well.
So Craig, at one time, we were talking about this contract moving to Commerce. Is that still a discussion, or are we still footing the bill on this thing through the end of the state's fiscal year?
It's through probably the end of the fiscal year. There's some challenges at Commerce right now, and I don't know where this process is in their game plan. So right now, we're the only one carrying this contract. I don't think that Commerce has anything at this point, but yes, we're the sole.
And follow up, this may be more for Bailey, because I see you have paper in hand. Item number 8 is for a contract through the fiscal year of 25, end of June of 25. But then number 9 is payment for June, July, and August of 24, July and August of 24, the 25 fiscal year.
So 9, treat them separate. This one is for the contract moving forward. Item 9 is kind of doing things from backwards, I guess.
We have to
from
approve
a few months
payment for the last
before.
3 months.
And when we
Because
get
they've
to
been working
agenda
for us
items.
after the current contract expires, is my understanding,
Okay.
in good faith, yeah.
So
This,
8
we just did it get.
8 will be September through June.
It also is if, and it extends monthly, so if either party were to terminate it, it could end in December. So
Right.
we just put a hard date of, either it's gonna end when either party terminates it or June 30th of 2025, whichever occurs first.
Yeah.
So yes, but it would be, starting.
Are you still chairing the meeting and just abstaining from the vote, or Deidre, you go?
I was gonna make a motion to approve.
Okay, that's what I was gonna do. I just didn't know for sure who to do that through.
Bailey, is that appropriate for me to continue?
As long as she doesn't vote.
No, let's.
Okay.
Okay, so is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve, item number 8, to approve the contract with Artemis through June of 2025.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Vote.
Ms. Scurry,
Aye.
General Lyman,
Aye.
Mr. Schultz,
Aye.
Chairman Rolls,
Abstain.
Mr. Siegfried,
Abstain.
and Mr. Henry.
Yes.
All right, moving on to agenda item number 9. This is the consideration for approval, ratification of payment to the Artemis Group for June, July, and August 2024, which we were just discussing. The contract had expired, but on good faith, they had continued working, so we need to approve payment for the last 3 months. Is there a motion?
I'll make that
And
motion.
one quick question, that's at the same rate as the previous contract, right? Got it. Got it.
I'll make the motion to approve item number 9.
Second.
And a vote.
Ms. Scurry,
Aye.
General Lyman,
Aye.
Mr. Schultz,
Aye.
Chairman Rolls,
Abstain.
Mr. Siegfried,
Abstain.
Mr. Henry.
Yes.
Brenda, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, moving on to item number 10. Consideration for approval reimbursement to the Oklahoma Department of Aerospace and Aeronautics for Phase 1 pavement repair work.
Thank you for that. What we have here is a depiction of the 5 phases that we have worked with the Delta Airport Consultants, our airport engineer, our pavement engineer on this project, or these projects. Phase 1 is that which you see in purple, or, no, I'm sorry, in red or pink. What is that? I can't, orange? We'll go orange.
Yeah.
So that is,
Is it the far left
Depends
frame or
on
the
your
second
screen.
one in?
get right.
Second one in, I think.
I've got a laser.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This area right here, which is
Got it,
basically
yeah.
the north end of the apron.
Got it.
You see the hangars there, where all the congregation of all the hangars are. It's that pavement in front of that, all the way over to the main runway, south past Apron Road 2, and all the way north past the air traffic control tower, just behind our building a little bit. So there's a lot of pavement in that area. That's the area that gets the most traffic, and that's where PAC is doing their development. We actually extended the construction to go south of where they currently are, because they have plans, and there's always plans to continue to go south on that apron. The pavement repair will go south of where they are now, and then north past the tower to the FBO area, the current FBO area. That's phase 1. Phase 2, it's mismarked on this, but phase 2 will be the main runway, which is green. And that's what we were talking about earlier, about the pavement portions, the spalls, and everything on the main runway, and the electronics repair. So all that will be coordinated together. But on this one, we're focused on just that orange area. And that project is for Delta Airport Consultants. ODAA is our agent on this project, so they are basically handling all the aspects of this. What they will do is they will pay, actually, they're handling everything, the bidding on it and everything else. And what they will do is they will pay Delta, and then they'll invoice us. And the invoice amount that they will invoice us will be for $3,983,450. They're not quite ready to do that just yet. I wanted to get this on this month's meeting such that we can have that be prepared, so that when they do send us that invoice, there's nothing else that holds us up, because at this point, we've been delayed 15 months already on this project, so.
And that price is bidded amount.
And that is the bidded amount to the, and
Craig, that purple spot in the middle, why is there a cutout that doesn't go all the way to the edge of the apron?
That's gonna take a completely separate project. There are major repairs to be done in there, and our current budget doesn't allow for them repairs.
there's some serious upheavals in there. You could probably get some height on a bicycle riding down that apron. The engineers looked at it and said, at this point, you may not want to spend your resources on that area, since there's not any development that's planned for that section right now. That's something we might have to look at later, but for the funding that we do have, these other areas were a higher priority for.
I don't know if I agree. I don't know if I agree with it's not worth looking at right now, since, I mean, that is the
With the money that we
majority of
have.
our apron to park aircraft and expand.
Well, that apron is 96 acres of concrete. So the areas that we are repairing are huge areas. You can still park, I couldn't tell you how many large body aircraft on the north end and on the south end. But because the middle section and that section that's been left out was so neglected, and over the years they didn't make proper relief cuts, we've got this heaving. And I think you've been out to the airport where I've got it barricaded off.
Yeah, I've seen the barricades. Mhm.
And on top of that, it's in a floodplain. So it's gonna take a whole separate study and project to see what can be done of raising it up and repairing it, and talking, what we're spending on these 5 phases wouldn't be enough to do that area.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to send that as a takeaway as well. Can you talk to ODAA and, again, ballpark? We had all the resources in the world. What would it take to fix that I mean, because it's, like I said, it's a giant chunk of our ramp, and I understand that there's nothing out there right now, but we want to bring businesses here, and if we don't have ramp space for them, it's not necessarily the best. So like I said, I just want a big ballpark number of what we're talking about, just so that we make more of an informed decision.
One of the things that we've worked with Delta, our paving engineer, is to look at is there a way to make taxi lanes to maybe best utilize it the best we can, where maybe not repair, there's a lot of pavement, maybe not repair everything, but make a taxiway through there and repair certain areas so that we can, utilize it. We need to get we would like to have a way to get from the north end of the ramp to the south end of the ramp without getting out onto Taxiway Alpha, and which shares a runway.
I can
so.
appreciate that too. I just don't think that we can make an informed decision for those kinds of things without having that starting point. That's all. Just a big ballpark. I'm not asking for engineers or anybody. Just talk to Grayson and say, if we had to start from scratch, what is it per acre type thing? Thank you.
Yeah, and the initial inspection by the engineers was, let's look at, with the money you've got, let's look at these areas first.
I understand that.
So yeah, the request on the agenda is to set up and be prepared for ODA when they do invoices for the pavement project that's outlined in the orange for that. The figure of 3.983450. What font is this on this page? I'll put it up on the next screen here.
And so this does not include any fees we would pay to ODAA as our agent. This is only for the project itself.
They don't charge us fees.
No fees.
It's another bonus.
Okay.
At OMES, I think it was 7 to 9%. Yeah. No
Okay.
fees.
And that's $4 million for just phase 1.
And that was 24% higher than engineers' estimates. So we're preparing for subsequent phases to be, hopefully not, but.
And
I
can
think
you
we'll be
reiterate
honest.
what the increase was? Was it driven just by timing? I know costs of materials have increased, costs of labor have increased, or was there some more in-depth repairs that were required than were originally anticipated?
And what can also happen with this is what they know they can see. And anytime you start banging on a spall, the spall could be 3 inches deep or it could be 11 inches deep. And so they never really know until they start banging away at it and start pulling that out of there, how much filler they're gonna need to fill that up. So I don't know what can happen to it from here, Joe.
So one of the things that drove the price up was Western Oklahoma. It's a huge project. There's probably, I think, 150 working days in this. And companies did not want to bid on a project that forced them to put 2 or 3 crews out there. We could have went longer working days, but we've got so much to do. The engineering firm felt we needed it to have, and ODAA, I think, felt we needed to get it down to like 150 days. So there was one company that ended up bidding on it, and this is what I was told by Delta. And they reached out to some of the other companies that do this work and said, why didn't you bid on it? And they said, because it would have tied our company up completely for it, and they didn't want to do that. So they're looking at options for the next phases. That is a huge concern. We can't keep each phase 25% over budget for each phase. So they are looking at that, trying to figure out different ways of maybe bidding it out. So.
And does this come from prep funds, or ARPA funds?
Yes, sir.
Which,
Prep, I'm sorry.
Prep.
Is part of their concern housing crews out there for that long of a period?
I don't think it was necessarily housing the crews. I think it was tying their crews up in such a short amount of working time. They considered it short. They'd have to put multiple crews out there. They wouldn't be able to bid on other jobs. So they said companies just told them they weren't going to bid on it. But I don't think it was necessarily a housing, their crew issue. The company that bidded on it is an out-of-state company.
Any other questions or thoughts, points of discussion? Okay, do we have a motion on this agenda item?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Seconded.
Thank you. Have a vote?
Ms. Gurry,
Aye.
Journal Lyman,
Aye.
Mr. Schultz,
Aye.
Chairman Rolls,
Aye.
Mr. Siegfried,
Yes.
Mr. Henry.
Yes. So, will we get notification when this is done and everything went the way we expected it to?
Right, the project.
How's that gonna work?
The project will begin, the engineer, the contractor's on site in another state right now. When they finish that project up, they expect to be in Oklahoma, which will be,
October, they think they're going to start October 21st. So they'll be in construction for the November board meeting.
ODA will have this on their agenda at their next commission meeting, which I think is Monday. Don't hold me to that. But this will be an item on their issue. They were gonna have this on their agenda last week, but they didn't have a quorum, so it was not on, they didn't have a chance to address it yet, but wanted to get ahead of this such that they're not waiting on us when the project starts, because they'll send us the invoice, but I'm not sure if they'll do it at the beginning or if they'll do it in phases throughout the project. But we wanted to make sure that we had the money identified such that there's no holdups on our end. So thank you.
All right. Moving on, agenda item 11. Any board member comments regarding agenda items?
And Joe, I just wanted to say, like, I think that the idea of coming up with different ideas for that pad is fantastic, taxiways or whatever. I think it's a great idea. I just want to have a starting place for when, we talk, what are we doing with our funds? This is why that giant chunk is not getting taken care of. You know what I mean? I just want a starting point to come from. And I'd love to work with you on some ideas for that area.
Absolutely.
That's great. Very good. All right, any other comments?
Well, it's also good to have a list. You never know when somebody's gonna ask you, hey, what do you need? And if we all say the same thing, it matters.
Yeah.
And so I don't have any problem with her asking for two things right now. Wish list or whatever you want to call it. We don't call it wish. We'd like, these need to be done. And then when somebody says, hey, what do you need? I'll tell you. And we all know the list. You never know when you're going to come in contact with whoever. But we as a board commission owe it to who we're serving to have a list.
Good point. Okay. Any other comments? Okay, then let's see. Any new business, which would be something that could not reasonably have been known prior to the posting of the agenda? Okay, no new business. Then our next meeting will be November 13th, I believe. Does that sound like the correct date? And we talked about having that meeting at Burns Flat, which would be a really nice time of year to go to Burns Flat rather than July when we've been before. It's nice and
It's
hot
always
then.
nice to be out there.
Well, I'm sure it's always nice. It's always windy, isn't it?
No, it's not it's always windy, but it's always hot.
Okay.
And at that point, we should be able to see some pavement
Yes.
projects taking place as well. So there's more to see in November than you would see this month.
And it would be a great opportunity for us to really look at the physical location and see the projects and what you have envisioned. So I think it's great to see it here, but seeing it in person is always very helpful.
And there's always the potential that a large aerospace company may be there or may not.
Okay, well, that would be exciting as well. Okay, well, we have no other agenda items, So I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right.
Ms. Gurry,
Aye.
Chairman Lyman,
Aye.
Mr. Schultz,
Aye.
Chairman Rolls,
Aye.
Mr. Siegfried,
Aye.
Mr. Henry.
Yes.
Okay, then the meeting is adjourned.